Bureau, Ben Portnoy, a name that is familiar here in the Magnolia State. In a former life, not too terribly long ago, he was writing and covering Mississippi State. He's now covering South Carolina. He's the beat writer for the Gamecocks at The State in Columbia. Ben, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Can you find reasons for optimism surrounding this South Carolina team?
What's up, y'all? Appreciate you guys having me, first of all. But, no, I mean, I think there's a few things to get excited about. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I think that Shane Beamer's got a tall task ahead of him. I think, it's still a program that's won, 6 games in the last 2 years. It's not exactly a winning tradition of late. There's that piece of it. But, I mean, there's enough guys on this team where you think, okay, they might be able to win a couple of games and do something or beat someone they shouldn't. When you look at the defensive line, there's a handful of guys that are former 5-star recruits, and Zach Pickens and Jordan Birch. There's a lot of guys on that defensive line, too, that have been here a long time, former 4-star guys. I mean, Will Muschamp had his issues, but he recruited largely pretty well. I mean, he had a lot of guys that busted, but, generally speaking, if you look at rankings and that kind of thing, Muschamp did a pretty good job filling this team. Marshawn Lloyd's a guy that people are really excited about at running back. He's a former top 50 recruit and kind of picked South Carolina out of nowhere. In the class 2020, he tore an ACL in fall camp last year and is back and ready to go. And Kevin Harris comes back, as led the SEC in rushing last year, went for over 1,100 yards in just 10 games. So I think there's enough pieces where you think, okay, maybe they can figure something out, maybe they can make something work. I mean, no one's saying, and at least no one in the right mind is saying that this team should go and be competing for an SEC East title or anything like that. But sure. I mean, there's enough pieces there that they should be able to win a couple of games.
Ben, because we are in a world where coaches get paid so much and fans have so little patience, I don't even know if this is applicable. But should this be a kind of a year zero for Coach Beamer? Almost like not even count because he's got to figure out a way to kind of build it and give themselves a chance to get moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think that, when you look at it, this is a rebuilding process. And, whether people want to say that or not, or whether the fan base wants to admit that or not. I mean, again, this is a team that's won 6 games in 2 years. It's not, the team hasn't exactly been, is still a little bit removed. And frankly, not that far removed from a couple of 11-win seasons under Spurrier and a 9-win year under Muschamp. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I just was agreeing. I mean, it's not that long ago that they went, 11 wins in back-to-back seasons?
3 straight 11-win seasons between 2011 and 2013, if I'm not mistaken. This is a team that's the history and the glory years, or whatever you want to call it, are not that far removed. But when you look at the last 2-3 years, you look at the way last year ended with a lot of guys opting out, leaving the program. Those things add up, and you got to rebuild a roster, and that takes time. I mean, it really does take 2 or 3 years, and transfers can plug holes. And Shane Beamer hit the transfer market hard, and they brought in 9 transfers over the offseason, and that's a lot, and that can help. But you can't build a whole roster off of transfers. I mean, you got to be able to develop your own guys, and that takes time. I mean, they've got a class that's ranked in the top 20 right now, and I think 5th or 6th in the SEC right now. If those things add up and you stack classes on top of classes, theoretically you'd get some depth and build up some guys. But it takes time. I do really think that, it is a little bit of a year zero. What I've said mostly is, as long as South Carolina doesn't go 2-10, that's probably a win for Shane Beamer and company.
Hey, son, it's your dad. You know me. I've been hard on Shane Beamer. I've been saying stuff like, I think that he's just the head coach because his last name is Beamer more than anything else. You've had the chance now to talk with him a number of times and dealing with the media there. Just what are your early impressions of him? You've been around some successful head coaches. Do you think he fits into that mold?
What's going on, Pops? No, but I think that this is actually an interesting conversation. I talked to Sylvester Croom last week, and Mississippi State folks, for better or worse, will remember Croom. And I was talking to Sylvester about Coach Croom about having Shane on his staff, and at that point, Shane was 25, 26, and was coaching cornerbacks and was on the offensive side. He flipped sides of the ball. during his time at Mississippi State. But, the point was, the thing that Sylvester said was that there were, he was a guy that they knew they weren't going to hold on to him for very long. They knew that he was a good coach. They knew that other people were going to want him, hire him into a bigger position, that kind of thing. And, I think that the knock on Shane has always been that he wasn't a coordinator, and I get that to some degree. But at the same time, Dabo Swinney wasn't a coordinator before that either. There are guys that have kind of bucked that trend, and, largely head coaches have been coordinators. And I get that, but I think that, when you look at Shane and what he's doing, I think he generally says the right things. I think he is, learning how to manage and be a CEO, and that's, the hardest part of going from a head coach or, a position coach to a head coach, right? You got, instead of 15 guys, you got to deal with 115, and that's a hard transition. But I think that he's largely hired a group of guys that he wants to sort of let them do their jobs and, manage from a more meta perspective. And, it seems to have done that. I give him credit. He had some trouble filling the staff, but has, seemingly, hired guys that know what they're doing. And, there's a couple of guys on the staff who I think really highly of and are really highly thought of in the business. So, it's interesting. I think that it's a transition. I think that, for Shane, it's always been, hey, you're Frank's kid and kind of trying to get out of that shadow. And Shane's fought that his whole life. And I think that's a hard thing to do, especially when your dad is as successful as Frank Beamer was at Virginia Tech. And that's a difficult position to be in. But I mean, if you look at it, he's been a part of some of the most impressive programs in the, last decade, really. He coached at Georgia, he coached at Oklahoma and Virginia Tech for his dad a little bit. He was coaching at South Carolina when Spurrier got things rolling. He was the recruiting coordinator at South Carolina from 2007 to 2010, if I have the dates right. Those 11-win seasons came in 2011, 2012, and 2013. The guys that were winning those games were guys that Beamer oversaw their recruitment. So, he's clearly been a part of teams that have rolled and done well. It's just, being a head coach is a little bit of a different animal.
Ben, real quick on this quarterback situation. So Luke Doty projected to be the starter. He's hurt. Don't know if he's even going to be available for the opener, although Shane Beamer seems to not think that it's a season-ending deal. And so now a GA perhaps is in the mix. A walk-on is running number 2 at practice. What in the world is this going to look like at QB? We got about a minute and a half left.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a mess, full disclosure. But, I think that South Carolina's figuring it out. I think that Jason Brown, who's an FCS transfer, he played at St. Francis. Excuse my dog whining in the background. But, he's a guy that has played in 18 games at the FCS level, was pretty productive. I think he had 28 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. But, I think that's probably who you end up seeing trotting out on day one. Freshman Colton Gauthier was 3-star recruit, but it's a guy they're really high on maybe down the road. And, like you mentioned, Zeb Noland, who played at Iowa State and played at North Dakota State, backed up Trey Lance. So, there are guys in that room. It's been a little bit of a smorgasbord, but, it's my guess is as good as any, or your guess is as good as anyone's, because it's a little bit of a mess right now, and we'll see what happens. I guess the hope is basically that Luke Doty can get healthy.
Last thing for you. Does South Carolina win a league game? And if they do, who is the most likely victim?
Oh, I think they're going to win a league game, and I wouldn't be surprised if they win more than one, honestly. I think they beat Vanderbilt for sure. I think that Vanderbilt's got a long way to go, and, I think Clark Lee's a good head coach and can do good things there, but, that's a program that really, really has a lot to flip over and improve on. That said, I think that Vanderbilt's a team they can beat. I think Tennessee is, we'll see. I'm not convinced that Josh Heupel's a guy that can do really good things there, but I think there's some games on this schedule that, I think they can go steal one. You play Kentucky at home. Maybe you can beat Kentucky. But, yeah, I would circle Vanderbilt, and then probably, I guess, Tennessee would be my next guess.
All right. It's going to be interesting to see year one for Shane Beamer in South Carolina. Ben Portnoy writes at The State, covers the Gamecocks. Ben, great catching up with you, man. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, guys, great catching up with you guys, too, and appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely. Hope to catch